Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give people a minute or so to get in and get settled, and then we will get started. All right, I think we are good. Again, welcome everyone to our webinar today, Community Engagement During COVID-19. Our presenter today is Kris Gabrielsen, and our facilitator is Erin Ficker. This webinar is brought to you by the Great Lakes PTTC and SAMHSA. The Great Lakes ATTC, MHTTC, and PTTC are funded under the following cooperative agreements. This presentation and the opinions in it, are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the official position of DHHS or SAMHSA. The PTTC network believes that words have power and uses affirming language to promote the application of evidence-based and culturally informed practices in all of our activities. We have some housekeeping details for you today. If you are having technical issues, please individually message Stephanie Bellman or Christina Spanbauer in the chat section, and they'll be happy to help you. Please put any questions you have for the speaker in the Q&A section, also at the bottom of your screen. You will be directed to a short survey. We would really appreciate it if you could complete it right after this webinar. It's how we report back to SAMHSA, and it probably takes us, it will take you about 3 minutes. Certificates of attendance will be sent to all those who have attended this session and the second session. They will be sent via email after the second session, and you will be able to access the recording and slides for these webinars on our website. And if you would like to see what else we're doing, please follow us on social media. And I'm going to turn it over in just a moment to Kris Gabrielsen, who is the co-director of the Great Lakes PTTC. She has worked in substance misuse prevention for over 30 years. She is was the associate director of the Western CAPT, co-author of the SAPST, and co-author of the Substance Abuse Prevention textbook. Kris has delivered trainings across the United States, focusing on bridging the gap between research and practice. And Erin serves as the prevention manager for the Great Lakes PTTC. For more than 16 years, Erin has worked in substance use prevention, supporting communities to use evidence-based strategies and data-driven processes in substance use prevention, planning, and implementation. She works with community-level prevention practitioners and schools in the development, implementation, evaluation, and sustainability of prevention interventions. So I will turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And thank you all for being here. I'm excited to be talking today about community engagement. And we have a poll that we wanted to share with you to ask you to get to know you a little bit. So the question we have for you is, at which level do you work in substance misuse prevention? So are you at the local level, the county level? Are you regional, meaning maybe you serve multiple counties or a state designated region? Do you work at the state level, or is there a different level that we haven't thought about? Or do you not work in substance misuse prevention? So if you can take a minute to answer that poll, it'll help us understand a little bit about who's with us today and help us think about community engagement at those different levels. So if we have mostly local people, we can be really focused on that local level. Or if we have a wide range, we can really make sure we're giving examples that speak to where you are in your prevention work. So we're talking about community engagement in the right way. So we do have a substance or a technical assistance provider. Thank you so much, Karen, for letting us know. For technical assistance providers, hopefully this can apply to all of your work as you support others in doing their work. So it looks like we've gotten our results, and I want to thank everyone for taking the time to answer the question. It looks like the majority of the folks are at the county and local level, which is great because that's where really a lot of the most important engagement happens, right? Is at that very local micro level. So we have 26% local, 41% county, and then start to dwindle off as we go to regional, state, and others. And we have 5% who don't work in the substance misuse prevention field. So just to let you know, we will be focusing on substance misuse prevention in our presentation today. But hopefully, oh my goodness, but hopefully you'll be able to take those examples and apply them to the field you are working in. So I'm going to stop talking because I am not the star of today's show. Kris Gabrielsen is. I don't know, is she there for you guys? Kris Gabrielsen is, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited for you guys to hear from her. So she and I will be leading you through this. And so Kris, take it over.
All right, thanks, Erin. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started on our presentation for today. So our path for today, what we're going to cover is we're first going to make sure we have a common understanding about the definition of community engagement. So as we use those words today, what do we mean? We're going to look at the spectrum of community engagement. Timing your community engagement is very important. And then we'll move into the majority of our time we will spend on looking at non-digital strategies for community engagement during COVID-19, and then moving on to digital strategies for community engagement during COVID-19. So let's first look at defining community engagement. And I found a great video that she does a really good job at describing community engagement. So I'm going to go ahead and play a clip of that video for you.
School from closing. When communities come together to address an issue, this is what we call community engagement. Like community, there are many definitions of community engagement. For the purposes of this module, we will define community engagement according to the Tamarack Institute as the process of working collaboratively with and through groups of people affiliated by geographic proximity, special interest, or similar situations to address issues affecting the well-being of those involved. As I'm sure you can imagine, there are many benefits to participating in community engagement efforts. Community engagement empowers citizens to take responsibility for the things that are happening in their own community. It also encourages community members to address the needs that are directly relevant to their neighborhood or their community. When people participate in community engagement efforts, they're able to contribute to and enact change in their community rather than passively accepting the circumstances under which they live. Community engagement, not surprisingly, strengthens community spirit and levels of social inclusion and belonging of its members. When more voices are heard, higher quality solutions to community issues are created, and there's a more efficient use of the resources. Lastly, community engagement efforts can inform both policy making at various levels of government and service planning.
All right. So just for summary, in terms of what she said, what she described or how she defined community engagement is the process of working collaboratively with and through groups of people affiliated by geographic proximity, special interest, or similar situations to address issues affecting the well-being of those involved. So as we go through the webinar today, keep in mind that this is the definition. These are the ideas behind what we're focusing on for this webinar. All right, and some benefits that she pointed out, just to make sure you have them all together and handy, is benefits of community engagement include empowering citizens, addressing relevant needs, contributing to change, strengthening social inclusion, arriving at higher quality solutions, and last but not least, informing policy decisions. So many, many benefits to community engagement. There's one other benefit that she doesn't talk about, which I think is very important, and that is that community engagement promotes sustainable solutions to complex social issues. So as we're looking at ensuring that we have sustainability for our substance misuse prevention programs, community engagement is an essential piece of that. All right, so let's turn our attention to the spectrum of community engagement. So we know the what and the benefits, but what are we talking about? What levels exist of community engagement? Some of you may have seen this before. There's several different spectrums that exist like this that have slightly different words, but same concepts. So what we're seeing as you go from the top down to the bottom of this screen are a greater impact on, or increasing impact on decisions that are made. So at the top, if we're looking at informing, if you're wanting community involvement just by that you want to inform folks about what's going on, that can help provide balanced and objective information to help increase understanding. Move on down a little bit farther to consult, and that's when you might want to obtain community members' feedback. So that's the type of engagement you're wanting, is you're wanting community members' feedback. Next, evolve. So you want to work directly with community members throughout the process. So again, increasing the level of engagement here. Fourth, collaborate. That's when you look at partnering with the community in the decision making. And then last but not least, of course, is empowering, that you're placing the final decisions into the hands of the community. So as we're thinking about community engagement, and we're talking about the different possibilities, different ways that we can engage the community, you will need to be sure to think about where you are on this spectrum of what kind of community engagement you're wanting to do, because depending on the type of engagement you're wanting, the level of impact and the decision you're wanting the community to have is going to inform which strategies you want to use of community engagement. So here are a few thoughts of a few ways that you'll see that it varies in terms of the level of spectrum and the spectrum of engagement of the types of things that you could use to help gain that participation from the community. So everything from inform, you're looking at fact sheets, websites, open houses, etc. You know, involve, you're looking more at workshops, polls, it could be social media discussions. You know, collaborate, you're looking at citizen advisory committees. So again, very different kinds of strategies in order to reach the goal of what type of community engagement you're wanting. So we've talked about defining what it is, the benefits of community engagement, and the spectrum of community engagement. Last part that I want to make sure to go over before we jump into the different types of strategies is timing your community engagement. So some things to consider. You know, of course, you know, we're deep into this pandemic. You know, we're a good year and a half in. So many of you have probably already asked many of these questions, but perhaps not all of them, as you were thinking about how to proceed with community engagement. So a few things to think about. First is, what do we hope to achieve, and will we act on the input? That second part is particularly important. We don't want to go out and get some engagement going, ask questions, etc., whatever it might be. And if we aren't going to act on that information, then that's not helpful at all. We've just used up some of our community engagement options, and I kind of think of it as a pot of community engagement, that we're pulling some out, that communities are willing to engage at this point, because it is much harder and there's much less access to community engagement. So we want to make sure that we're going to act on the input that we receive. Another question is, do we need engagement now? Will postponing have an impact? So timing, do we need it right now, or is this something we can wait on? Will anyone respond to our questions now? Of course, this is a really good point, right? So we can put out a survey, we can solicit information, we can try to pull committees together, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know about you all, but I find that it's very hard to even pull me into things right now. I don't know about you, but it's like, okay, it's just really important for me to do. And so making sure that if we are going to have the engagement, if we need the engagement, can we get that engagement right now? Will anybody respond? And a fourth question on this screen, and then I have a few more on the next one, is can we engage a representative sample, or will we miss some people if we engage now? So will we really get the people responding who we're wanting to respond? And I see Cynthia put in the chat box that acting on input builds trust. Absolutely. Really great point, Cynthia. That if you go out and ask for input and don't do anything with it, you're going to do the exact opposite, right? You're going to destroy any trust that you've built. So great point. Thanks, Cynthia. A few more questions. How will our requests be received? So if we are requesting for people to be involved in certain ways, or to respond to surveys or needs assessments, or a focus group, or whatever it might be, will it be, why are they asking us, or why are they asking us again, or why aren't they asking me, if you aren't getting to the right folks that you're wanting to, needing to get information or engagement from, I should say. Can we ensure we will not overburden community members with requests for input? Always an important question to ask. And the last question is, can we be doing other things to advance our goals effectively without community engagement? So again, that's the balance between, do we really need community engagement right now? Can we get what we need through other mechanisms? If it's, like involving data, is there another way to get some data? If it's to get input, can we get some more informal input from some key leaders instead of getting a broader base? Or the answer might be, no, we need a large group, or even a good representative sample of community engagement for this. And that's when you would want to move forward with strategies that we'll be talking about in just a little bit. I found this, it's called an annotated strategy triage tool. They're going to put a link in the chat to this document. I know there's a lot of words on this screen, and I really try to not put a lot of words on the PowerPoint slides. So feel free to click on that document in the chat box so you can see it on your screen and keep it for later. But I really liked it, and I wanted to point out that it exists because this can help you walk through figuring out the timing for community engagement. So you'll see on the left-hand side, in that kind of peach colored box, you would look at what are the items that are relevant and possible and will go forward, though perhaps not as planned. So make a few notes on likely modifications is what they say with that. So that's the box of it's a current priority, still relevant, we want to continue moving forward. The yellow box is pause and resume when crisis is over. So again, we kind of thought a while ago that this crisis was going to be over by now, right? Or at least some of us. I certainly had hoped anyway. But are there still things that maybe even we think for 6 more months we want to pause before we want to resume? So in this box, in the yellow box, you would put that the items that you would want to pause and resume later. Blue box is emerging priority or existing but newly prioritized. So it says here these items are new or newly prioritized items that are on the table because of the current conditions. So these are things that before the pandemic, or even before the school year, whatever it might be for in your situation, that weren't priorities before, but are the newer priorities. Have popped up on your screen. The green box is unknown status or approach. These are items that are either unclear or in too much flux to decide. So this is a catch-all for we need to find out more about it before we figure out if they should go in the peach, yellow, or blue box. Or the bottom one is honor and let go. So it's like, yeah, that was great 2 years ago. It was a really great thing to do, but at this point, it doesn't fit our needs. It's no longer where we need to be heading. So this can be a useful way to organize all the different things that you're doing. If you're working with a community coalition, the different kinds of projects that you all have worked on in the past, or even have worked currently. If you're with a county program and you have multiple programs that might be school-based, community-based, maybe a parenting program, etc., try to figure out which, where each one lands within this triage tool. So I'm curious if you could go to the chat box. I would love to find out what is an example of prevention work for you that would fit in the pause and resume box. So what have you put, perhaps, or as you're thinking about it now, what would you put in the yellow box? If you could go ahead and put in the chat box what you would put in that box, I would love to hear. I'll wait as people are typing. Hidden in plain sight display. So Daisy, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. In-person recruitment, Jenny says, Laura says in-person family programs. Karen says monthly in-person meetings. Sandra is community assessment, etc. I'm going to let you all just continue to read on. I don't have to read for you. But these are great examples of things that you probably really need to put in a yellow box, but they're things that you really want to still do and are important, but we just need to pause now and you want to continue later. Annual conferences, coalition meetings, in-person stakeholder meetings, great examples of what you would put in the yellow box. All right, let's shift gears now. And what is an example of prevention work for you that would fit in the current priority and continue forward box? So that peach box, at least on my screen, it looks peach. I'm not sure what it looks like on yours. Peach box, what are your current priority, continue forward activities? What would you put for those? Okay, raising awareness of community issues, great mentoring with youth, National Drug Take Back Day. I know lots of folks have continued with those. That's great. Virtual parenting class, love it. Coalition meetings virtually, family and parenting support programs. Great. Lots of things that you all have continued on with. Great. Wait and here, see a few more folks.
Yeah, this is great. What we see coming in: family engagement activities, virtual meetings with student advisory boards. These are great. The effects of COVID on substance use and mental health. So starting parent education programs. This is wonderful stuff that you're continuing to do and moving forward with.
Yes.
And if great social media campaigns are also perfect right now, right? Great.
Yes, definitely. All right, thank you everybody for sharing those examples from your own situations of what you're putting in some of these boxes. So again, there's a document you hopefully clicked on that you can use this at a later time, and you of course will also be getting these PowerPoint slides, so you'll be able to look at it that way as well. All right, so Anne, we have Anne here too, but Erin is your name. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and so that we can both be seen. Hello. Do you like your new name?
I do. I've always felt like Erin didn't fit me.
Yes, yes. All right, so feel free, folks, to put in the Q&A box any questions that you might have on this initial information. So when we're talking about defining community engagement, the benefits of it, looking at the spectrum as well as the timing. So any questions before we move into the non-digital strategies will be next. And also feel free to put some comments in there as well if you are on the chat box, in the chat box, if you like.
Yeah, if there's anything you'd like to share about what you've been doing that relates to the items we've been talking about, or any questions you have related to it. So comments in the chat, questions in the Q&A box. And like Stephanie's been saying throughout, and Christina, feel free to, throughout the presentation, use that Q&A box to write in any questions you may have.
All right, I'm not seeing any yet. So I think,
oh, great. It looks like already
Oh,
looking forward to sharing this information with our community engagement groups.
great.
And we also have a question. How do you address having to pause with community engagement, but some community members being confused or angry as to why? That is a great question. Good luck, Kris.
I was gonna say, Erin, you're gonna answer that, right?
I'm gonna give that one to you.
You know, this is one I would love to have this be a meeting format so people could chime in, but so without having that ability, if folks have ways that they have done that, if you want to write that into the chat, I think the group think on this kind of thing can be really helpful. But I would say, Karen, in my own experience, it is to make sure that we are really clear in our communication about why we're needing to do it. Saying that we also don't all agree on the different things that can and cannot go on right now, but at this moment in time, this is the best way we can move forward. That's not a cure-all for it, but I think just the more explicit you can be about why you're doing things and what you're doing instead also can be really important. So it's not like you aren't doing anything at all, you're just sitting at home and whatever. But the actions that you are taking.
Yeah, I think it's great explaining the consequences of moving forward as well. So the consequences of moving forward when not everyone can be involved can be really detrimental, right? So if some people are ready to move forward and some people aren't, and there's kind of a general mismatch in the community for, with COVID, pretty good reasons, very good reasons. I think explaining to those folks that are angry and wanting to move forward with community engagement, that if we don't all move forward together, we will lose people and will actually cause damage to the process, right? And to the work. So I think that might be helpful. Also explaining why not having people on board might lower the possibility of reaching your outcomes. And you can kind of go back to a logic model that way too, and say like, listen, community engagement's a part of this logic model. If we don't get this here, then this doesn't happen, and this doesn't happen, and then this doesn't happen, and we don't get refunded, right? So I think explaining the consequences can be really powerful. Hey, I get that this is frustrating. Let me tell you why we made this decision to stop.
Great.
Because I see that there's some more
Great.
questions.
Well, and Karen said we could probably do a whole different training on this. Absolutely.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
I agree.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
So could you address the dark side of community engagement where
AstroTurfing. I'm not sure what
Oh,
AstroTurfing.
AstroTurfing. So AstroTurfing is when it's fake grassroots.
Oh,
AstroTurfing. I was like, I don't even know what that word is.
Perfect.
The dark side of community engagement. Okay, so let me start again with the question.
Okay.
Can you address the dark side of community engagement where AstroTurfing, hidden corporate influence, mis and disinformation take over public discourse? How much of a threat to more honest, collaborative, and representative community engagement does some of the current community engagement trends comprise? That's a tough one. And again, I'm gonna turn it over to Kris.
Yeah. Why did we say we're doing this Q&A? No,
I don't know.
This is an excellent question. I have to say, I honestly don't have a great answer to it. I think that the more that you can have your voice out there, where you do have the honest, collaborative, representative community engagement, as much as you can do to put that out there to help balance that, is really in many ways most what you can do. Go ahead, Erin.
I was just saying the other piece that's helpful, and it's not helpful in the moment. So I'm just going to say, like, this is more of a long-term preventative issue related to this. And I think we know that this kind of astroturfing and corporate influence can be, has been going on for a while. So it's not new, right? But one of the things that could help is media advocacy training or media education training, right? So training our youth and our coalition members in understanding how media is used, right? So it's something that we're starting to do more in schools, where we're training kids on, you know, my son's in 6th grade and he's been coming home from his library class with information about how to understand real information, how to understand you know, questionable information, how to look at sourcing. So one of the things that you might consider is making sure that your schools and your community have that kind of training. It's not something that you can necessarily do, but making sure that there's a place where media education is happening. And that's education on how to make sure you're looking at viable sources, you understand influence in media and motivation. So that would be something that might help with that. But again, that's a real long-term solution to what might feel like an immediate problem.
Very good point. Thank you. All right, with that, I'm thinking we should jump into the next section. Does that sound good?
Great.
All right, thanks. Erin will be back shortly.
Bye.
All right. So let's go ahead and jump into non-digital strategies for community engagement during COVID-19. So a couple thoughts: that people are often excluded from digital forms of engagement for various reasons that we will explore in a little bit. But the groups of folks who are often excluded are elderly folks, you know, those folks who haven't grown up using the technology that many of us have, those reentering life after incarceration, people who are houseless, people with physical and mental disabilities, people with low income, people with working several jobs or working non-traditional hours, people who are English language learners, those in rural and frontier areas, as well as those impacted by pandemic challenges such as child care, schooling, housing instability, food insecurities, etc. So this is a lot of folks, right? So if we're relying only on digital forms of engagement during this time, we are going to be missing out on a lot of people and a lot of folks who really need to be engaged, and we need to be able to engage them in order to make sure that, you know, if we're doing surveys, needs assessments, imagine missing all these folks. We would have missed such a huge segment of our population. If we're doing a focus group and we only do it digitally, you know, through Zoom or whatever it might be. If we're only doing our community coalition meetings through the digital format and we haven't found ways to engage other folks, we're missing many voices within our community. So that's why we're going to focus on these non-digital forms of communication for a little bit. All right, so first, one way for a non-digital form of community engagement is to use community networks and connections. And I just want to say, I'm guessing that a lot of you are using a lot of these strategies right now. So I'm guessing, so if you're saying, well, yeah, obviously, or yes, I'm already doing that, great, that's perfect. But what I found is that some folks are using some of them, but then many of us have forgotten about other forms that we could use as well. So I'm hoping that as we go along, you're like, yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah, we're doing pretty well on that. Or, oh, well, maybe we could even beef that up, or, you know, do some more with that. Or, oh gosh, we haven't tried that one yet. So if you want to jot down some notes as you're going through for different things that you've either already been doing or you might want to consider doing. All right, so using existing community networks and connections helps you leverage community champions to help you build trust. So we were just talking about trust a little bit ago. By doing this, it helps you increase the likelihood of gathering more honest and in-depth responses. And it can help you gain opportunity to distribute information and or surveys through these connections. So thinking about examples then. So when we're talking about these community networks and connections, who am I talking about? I'm talking about connecting with the head of Chamber of Commerce in order to connect with area businesses. Perhaps you could contact faith communities so that they could share information with their congregations. I know most, if not all, of the faith communities in my community have continued to meet throughout the pandemic, although in different formats. But I know there's email communications, there's in some cases in-person communication, there's small group, all those kinds of things. So great networks to work through. You can connect with women's groups that exist within communities, as well as existing youth groups. So perhaps you had your own youth group through your coalition or school-based youth groups that you worked with. If those aren't accessible at this point, perhaps there are some others within your community that you can connect with. It might be going back to those faith communities that they might have youth groups that have continued to meet throughout the pandemic. Or it might be if you have boys and girls clubs that they might not have youth groups in particular, but groups of youth who are there meeting and already together. So figuring out who is already out there doing things that you can connect with and build with and collaborate to be able to engage with folks that way. So that's one idea for non-digital community engagement. Another one, this is kind of, a lot of these feel, to me, I have to say, they feel kind of old fashioned. So it's like, oh yeah, I remember when, kind of thing. So this is one of those. So you can install message boards where you can post information on physical neighborhood message boards. These can often be useful in low income and elderly communities. If you, like me, were, when I came across this idea, I'm like, what's a message board? Here's a picture of a message board. Does this make more sense now? I know it did for me. So it's those physical places that you can go, and you could use push pins to put up announcements about different things within a community. Great way, you know, especially if it's a large group, a dense population within an area. This can be a useful way to get out information, especially if you put it like next to a bus stop, or you put it next to where people collect their mail, or someplace where people are going to go by often. Erin, did you have a thought about this?
I was just going to say the best story of a message board that I heard was that they really wanted to get men involved because it was mostly women, and they found out that dads were taking the recycling to like the recycling center and the composting center. They were all in the same place, and then they would stand around and talk because they're like jibberty jab. So they used them. There was a message board there, and they put their materials there, and they started to get dads in. So knowing where the folks you need may be and targeting those message boards was really helpful for this particular community, and it can be really helpful for your community. It was just such a great example of,
I
like,
love that.
where can we get men? The dump, apparently.
Sorry, men who are on
Sorry.
here.
No, the recycling center
Yes.
was where they went, and it worked very well.
Great, I love it. And Brenda, in the chat, you put HYVEE. I'm not sure what that is. If you do, you know?
It's Hy-Vee. It's a grocery store, and it's
see,
local to the
I'm in
Midwest.
Oregon, you all. So I'm sorry. I'm showing my ignorance.
So I translate from Midwest
Thank you.
to Pacific Northwest. It's one of my skills.
Yes, thank you, Erin, for being my translator. But yes, absolutely. A great idea, Brenda, in terms of grocery store message boards. Excellent, excellent idea. All right, another idea for a non-digital strategy are phone trees, or I love this idea, phone orchards. So you're not just one tree, but you have a bunch of trees in terms of creating a phone orchard. Love this idea. So through phone trees or phone orchards, you can contact community members through key callers who contact people under their branch. And I'll show you a visual in the next one if you aren't familiar with these. These are useful for spreading a brief message quickly and efficiently to many people. Brief is the key word here. I don't know if you all played the telephone game when you were a kid, but if it gets passed around too many times and if it's long, it's completely lost. So spreading a brief message. It is an effective way to engage the elderly, people without internet access, and people without computer skills. So something, a great tool for your toolbox in terms of community engagement if you're trying to reach some of those folks who can be hard to reach, especially if we're relying a lot on digital strategies. there's this website. I went ahead and put that in there. I know it's a long link, but they had it's just a great succinct explanation on how to build an effective phone tree. So if you're interested in doing that, I recommend going to that page. One other thing I recommend if you're going to do this, and we did this quite a bit with within one of the nonprofit groups that I work with in our community. At the beginning of the pandemic, we created some phone trees to get out information and to connect and make sure everybody was okay. But what's really important is to have it written down in some way what you want folks to say or ask the people in their phone tree, so that you don't get into that telephone game thing. So if you can have a short description of, the intro language, I'm calling because da 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 da. And then I just, I wanted to check in with you. I mean, those are the purpose of those calls, but this might be, we were wondering if you, whatever it might be. And then they could collect information if you're wanting that, or just sharing information about something coming up or some resources, whatever it might be. So I highly recommend having some written information for the people making the phone calls. And Christina put the link in the chat. Thank you, Christina, for doing that. So if you want to click over so it's there after the webinar, you can feel free to do that. So if you aren't familiar with a phone tree, this is an example of a layout. So up here at the top, this could be like if I was the coordinator of the phone tree, what I would do is I would personally write up something of what I wanted to have each of my key folks convey to their branch of the tree. And I would give that information to the key group here, this line. It'd say, hey, can you please call your folks and give them this information? Then they in turn would call these 4 folks or however many were under their branch. So with my contacting 4 people, we have then hit 1, 2, 3, 20 people, all within perhaps one email that I send to these folks. So it can be an effective non-digital community engagement strategy. All right, another idea, mailings to homes. Again, feels kind of old-fashioned. Isn't that strange to say? But this can still be an effective way to share information. You can just share information dissemination kind of information, or you could do surveys through them. If you do want people to return things, highly recommend you have a prepaid return envelope. Otherwise, your return rate will probably be really low. Something you might think about is what is already coming to people's mailboxes, such as utility bills. That often, like within the utility bills, I know at least with mine, they will slip in pieces of paper from other organizations, or they even have a spot to make announcements on their bills. So if you're thinking about doing this, you might watch your mailbox for a couple of weeks and just see what's coming and what everybody else in your community will be getting as well. And that could be a way to tie into what is already coming to people's mailboxes. Here's an example from Humble Allies for Substance Abuse Prevention, their community coalition. They just sent a postcard to their community coalition members. So in this case, it was making sure their community coalition members had this information on what progress they've made with people from the teen court. So again, you're thinking it could be a mailing to your whole community. It might be to just a few folks that you're wanting to reach. In this case, it was just their coalition members. Another non-digital strategy is to partner with gatherings still happening. And I did notice that somebody earlier put in the chat box that I think meal sites was one of that somebody had a suggestion. There we go. Cynthia said elderly meal sites. This is where I would put that in terms of using these brief moments where people are already gathering to ask questions, share information, or brainstorm, get some brainstorm information from them. So gathering examples, mutual aid services, such as elderly meal sites, book and technology pickups from school or other kinds of school gatherings of anything that would be happening where people would be coming through the school, food distribution centers, nonprofit organizations working with vulnerable populations, Meals on Wheels, grocery stores and pharmacies, and places where people are waiting in long lines. So this could be many different places, but think of a captive audience in a way. It's like if they're already there, they're just standing there anyway. This could be a great opportunity to either share information, ask a few focus group I wouldn't say focus group questions, survey questions to ask folks. Other things, again, making sure you ask the sponsoring organization that it's okay to do before you do that, unless it's a public activity. But could be for vaccinations, with kids getting vaccinated, perhaps if you're wanting to focus on parents with kids who are in the elementary age range, that could be a great place to go and talk to folks who are in line waiting for vaccinations, hopefully coming up next week. So think about where in your community people are waiting in long lines. Door hangers, another, I keep saying old fashioned, that I really should come up with some other terminology, but think about those, that it can be very useful in small geographic areas. And again, this is an information dissemination type strategy. And if you're saying, what's a door hanger? Here's an example of one that West Virginia Prevention First put out. Again, small font, but I just wanted you to get a visual of, you can have one side where you could describe what your organization is, and on the back you might have some resources listed, different things that you want folks to know. Takes a little time to go hang them on each door, but really, if you're doing a small geographic area, it's not too long, and people, some people will just pick it up and throw it away, but most people will actually look at it, glance at it, and see what they can pull out of it, if it's useful for them or not. All right, we are down to, I believe this is the last non-digital strategy I'm going to share, is thinking back to what can we do with local radio stations, public access TV, and newspapers. Especially Spanish-speaking radio stations. I know out here in Oregon, we have a large Spanish-speaking population. The Spanish radio stations are an excellent way to get to engage that group, that get information to that community. So again, thinking about in your community, the populations you're wanting to reach, what are some mechanisms that they are using to get their information? So is it a local radio station? Is it public access TV or newspapers? There are existing things that you can already use in terms of radio spots, ads, in terms of print ads, TV commercials. There's different things that already exist that you can tap into if it meets your needs, not to just go off in a whole nother direction that wouldn't help you reach your goals, but you can look to see what's out there. An example of that is SAMHSA's Talk, They Hear You campaign. I'm going to play an example of a radio ad that you can just go onto this website and you can go download it and use it. So it's free. So let me go ahead and I'm going to switch over and play that for you.
Hi, it's Tori DeVito. In every family, small conversations can make a big impact, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life.
I wanted you to know, from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now, that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
All right. So just one example of quality information that you can use with your different types of media. All right, so this is what we talked about so far. Phone trees, mailings, community networks and connections, gatherings still happening, message boards, door hangers, and traditional media. I know there's other types of non-digital strategies out there, but I thought these might be the most useful ones for the broadest group of folks here. But thinking back to what did we do digital era in terms of, I think I started in the prevention field back in the 90s. So thinking back to what we did then, as well as even in the early 2000s, if you came into prevention later, you might connect up with some folks who have been around for a while and just start saying, have that conversation of, so what did you do? What was most effective? And get some ideas from them. Oh, and Cheryl said billboards. Absolutely. Yes, that can be an excellent way to get out information to the community. All right, we're going to do a couple of quick polls. With the first one is, which of these non-digital strategies for community engagement have you used frequently during the last 1.5 years? So what have you been using? We're very curious to know which of these have you already been exploring and using.
Thanks. Yeah. So take some time to choose one of those. And if there's something that's not listed there, or you'd like to tell us a little bit more about the phone tree you used, the community networks, the message boards, please feel free to put that in the chat, as that helps us understand a little bit more about why or how you're doing that work.
Great. So it looks like a lot of community networks and connections.
Yard signs.
Great. And a lot of traditional media. Oh yeah, yard signs, Elizabeth said. Love
My
it.
town loves a yard sign. I'll tell you what, I think I've got 5 out there right now.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not even like an election year or anything, just yard signs. We love ourselves some yard signs here.
That's great. Oh, I love, Alicia says, messaging on coffee sleeves. I have never seen that before. What a fantastic idea.
I love prescription bags because nobody stops getting prescriptions during a pandemic, right? You may not go to the coffee shop, but you're going to go on a walk maybe and see a yard sign. You're still going to get your prescriptions and see that prescription bag, so really if you're talking about kind of a more substantial situation where people aren't going out at all, some of these are really great. We gave a presentation to the local Kiwanis and Lions Club, someone said, again, and that's like a virtual probably meeting you can attend and give that presentation to. That's great. So let's look at the findings that we saw here. Phone trees, not so much, but we do see that a large number of folks indicated community networks and connections. Gatherings that are still happening in traditional media were kind of the leading ones, along with I think I got them all. The coffee sleeves have been a big hit. I think those are, I really think those are great, especially for
this. She says that they have the parent norms campaign findings and hand them out at the high school concession stand at football games.
Oh, that's perfect. Pizza boxes are great.
Coasters.
Oh, coasters from local restaurants. That's great. Places where people are. Schools will distribute information and newspaper inserts, library presentations. These are all great. Places where people already are.
Fantastic. Love it. All right.
Popcorn bags.
Here's the next poll. Is which of these non-digital strategies for community engagement are you now considering trying? So now that we've talked about it, people have all these great ideas in here. Feel free to also put in the chat if it's not one of the options, what you're thinking of trying. Oh, love people's ideas.
I know, so many great ideas. And I'll eat popcorn anywhere, so those popcorn bags sound perfect. I'd read anything on the side of the popcorn bag. Halloween
I was really liking the pizza boxes.
Yeah, I saw someone post in the Q&A about Halloween handouts, right? So you give kids candy and a little bit of information. Taco packs for parents. Taco about it. I don't know, but it says taco about it.
Oh.
I'm not going to stop laughing about that one. I love me a good taco.
Okay, got it.
That's great.
All right.
So wonder what people are, remembering these are great examples, but what are you thinking about doing? So message boards, door hangers, are things people are thinking about doing now. Phone trees are something people are, considering, given the information that you've shared. But those message boards, and door hangers gatherings still happening are those ones that are really leading the charge here in what we're seeing in phone trees. Those bars are confusing.
Great. All right. Well, we do have a question in the Q&A. I want to make sure we jump into that before we move on to the next section.
Well, this was about handing out Halloween.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So that was the individual who shared lovely sharing around handing out over 15 pieces of information during Halloween outings.
That is impressive.
Great.
That is
Yep.
a lot.
So whether you're coming to a trunk or treat event or handing out candy, those are great. I actually had a communication campaign group once that turns out that a Laffy Taffy is the exact size of a return address label. And they put their message on a sticker and put that sticker on the back of a Laffy Taffy. And then, right, a little Laffy Taffy. And then handed those out at the high school or at events. And everybody loves the Laffy Taffy. I think everyone does. I know I do. And then they also got those messages. So placement on things that people are going to be using anyway. Cafe placements was another one. So all kinds of things people are considering, Kris, that you've already mentioned. So it seems like you've gotten people thinking about their engagement.
Great. Thank you. All right. Well, let's make sure we save enough time to get through the digital.
Hey, you guys are so great.
We're going to forge right on. Okay. Okay. So oops, I forgot to click over there. Here we go. All right, so digital strategies. Few things to think about before we jump into the different digital strategies. And the big one is equity considerations. What do we need to make sure we keep in mind before we implement digital strategies? Some strategies to enhance equity when implementing digital strategies include, first of all, recording online meetings for people to watch it on their own time. Translating online meetings into relevant languages, again, depending on your community, that would dictate which languages to translate them into. Provide American Sign Language and subtitles or closed caption options for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. Or I have to say also for people who are commuting, people who are on the run kind of thing, that I know for me that I might be someplace where I'm sitting and waiting, and I will watch a webinar reading the description as I'm reading the subtitles, I should say, or the closed captioning, in order to get the information that way, because I can't put in headphones for whatever reason, excuse me. So it can be helpful for other folks, for people who can hear as well. The other thing to think about is finding solutions to increase computer and internet access. I know that this became a huge issue when kids were moved to online school last year. So I think people's awareness of this issue and the need to address it is much greater than it has been in the past. So keep these in mind as you're thinking about implementing these digital strategies. All right. Social media. I'm guessing many of you are already doing this, but a few things to keep in mind if you are looking at using social media for community engagement. You can use social media, various ways. So thinking back to that spectrum, I'm doing that where it's the rows down, starting from inform all the way down to collaborate and empower. Thinking about different ways in that spectrum that you can use social media. You can use it purely to inform, like educate your community, raise awareness. You could also use it to attract new partners, shift community norms if you're working on a norming campaign, publicize your program or coalition, or you could generate attention and discussion on an issue. So these are some of the ways that you can use social media for substance misuse prevention programs. Some things to think about if you are doing using social media is in each of your social media posts, I highly recommend that you include a call to action, a link to more information, a video or image, and hashtags. And I'm going to go through each of those just briefly to make sure you understand what I mean by each of those. So a call to action. In a call to action, you'll want to use powerful, clear, instructive verbs. You want to create urgency. So sign up right away, and you'll see, have them choose clear over, and I should say, so create urgency, do it right away. We got to do something, if you want to take advantage of this, you got to do it right now. You want to choose clear over clever. So instead, sometimes people can get quite flowery in social media posts, but sign up today, not it would be nice if you would consider da 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 da. Nope, just bottom line it. What do you need them to know? Send audience exactly where they need to go. So if it's the call to action is to go and do something, to go to a website and do something, to go to a registration form, to whatever it might be, let them know exactly where they need to go to do it. Keep it conversational, not sales pitchy. This is really important with social media. I know the training that I received in social media, they really encourage you to make it sound as though you are talking to the person reading it. So don't be bureaucratic in your language. Don't necessarily be formal, but just as though you were sitting and talking to that person is how you would want it to be phrased in your posts. And finally, give your audience a specific step or task to do within your post. So again, this goes back to the sending the audience exactly where you need to go, and creating that urgency all ties into what do you want them to do as a result of reading this post. Second is always provide whatever you can and figure out some way. Include a link to more information. So if people have interest, you have pulled them in, you have engaged them, let them know where they can go to get more information. So make sure you include a link. Include a video or image. You'll see on the left-hand side a few points about this. Social media is a crowded space, as we all know. Images grab attention. A post with a photo is 10 times more likely to get engagement. So it's so critical to think about what image or video that you can include within your posts. Interesting, that third bullet there. If you pair a relevant image, relevant is key, relevant image with your material, people can remember 65% of the information after 3 days. So again, those neural connections, connecting the images to the information is extremely important. And as a parent of teenagers, this image definitely caught my attention. It's like, okay, what's going on? They're a group of teenagers. So that pulled me in to this post from SAMHSA. Few do's and don'ts with images. Do share images of interest to get to your focus audience. So know who you're trying to capture and engage within your post. Make sure you use images that would attract their attention. Always, 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 always get written permission before posting pictures of people. So if it's pictures of folks within your coalitions, if it's youth, get their parents' permission. Never post without getting people's permission. Use a variety of images. So it's as your posts come up, it's different kinds of things that come up to capture people's attention. Strive for fun is often some of the most engaging photos. So for example, I put here this dog with the sunglasses. If I was scrolling along, I'd be like, oh, a dog with sunglasses. I would probably stop. I was like, okay, what's that post about? So it's as you're scrolling, it's like, what is going to catch your attention? Erin, do you like the dog with sunglasses?
I love the dog with sunglasses. Oh, that's hilarious.
So, and you'll see a few don'ts of don't use selfies. You'll see up in the right-hand corner, there's a selfie of my husband and me. You would not want to use that picture in a post. It's an awful picture. It's nobody's going to stop and look at that. So unless, there's occasional, that captures something really important, but in general, don't use selfies. And of course, don't use copyrighted photos. So you'll see when we talk about images, I have a couple of other things here. There's a sign here. Again, it's kind of a funny kind of sign, but it's an image, even though it's a sign. And then in the upper left one, the image is a fact sheet or
Infographic.
Infographic, thank you, I lost that word. Infographics can also be useful. So when you're thinking of images, it doesn't have to be a picture. It could be different kinds of things. It could also be a video. Erin, did you have a thought about these?
No, one of the things I thought we would add is making sure that your pictures match the audience you're trying to reach. So if you're trying to reach, middle-aged or older parents, cats and dogs are great. If you're trying to reach younger kids, younger people, the images might want to match what they're interested in. I am not a teenager. I am not entirely sure what those are. So sometimes you may want to reach out to that audience and ask what works well, or focus group some of the images you are using. And then the other thing I wanted to add is I love infographics. I think they provide a ton of information in a memorable way quite quickly.
Exactly. Yes, I agree. I love them too.
Love me some infographics.
Yes. Well, and that is something I wanted to point out, that in terms of thinking about how you're going to implement social media, a social media campaign, is to think about exactly what Erin was talking about, is who is your audience and who you're trying to reach, and who knows how to reach those people. So thinking about right now, my son, who's a 16-year-old junior in high school, he's taking a marketing class at school, and he is currently in charge of, they have a group project, he's in charge of social media. And so they have a small group working on this, and they're learning how to do it. It's for an event that's coming up in January. So it's, for a live thing. And I'm thinking, if we can access, we could tap into our local schools. If you have a high school that's doing marketing and they have a social media component, perhaps you could tap into them of that, hey, I have a project for them that they could help us with. Or I know we also have an intern at the Great Lakes PTTC within the center in which we're in, that we have an intern whose special interest is in social media, who's helping us with that. So again, a college student might be a possibility. So if social media is not your thing, think about who you could partner with, who knows it well and could really help you do this. And let's go ahead. There was one more piece.
I just wanted to point out, we had a couple of comments in the chat, including, and I've seen a couple of times, is I'm using a QR code that takes people to websites or Facebook page, Twitter, or Snapchat, or wherever we're trying to get them to go. But that QR code can be really useful. And I think people are much more comfortable using QR codes after and during this pandemic. It's not over, during this pandemic, given that we sometimes are at restaurants and have to QR code the menu, or we're QR coding things that we don't want to touch. So often that is something that is useful, that I think we largely had let go and said, this isn't something people are using, but now we're finding they're coming back and people are more comfortable using that technology. So a couple of people had mentioned QR codes, and I wanted to make sure that was mentioned. And again, someone made the same comment, that you have to know where your audience is. And as those of us who have finally learned, kids are not on Facebook. Moms are on Facebook, yes. Maybe not so much the kids. So pointing that out.
Yes, and that, Jill, it's an excellent point in the chat about making sure you are using the social media platform that matches your audience. There is a document that the Pacific Southwest PTTC put together, I helped with, where we actually went through and looked at the data to show which social media platforms were used most by which groups. So I don't know, Erin, if you have that handy, or somebody else, if somebody can pop that into the chat at some point. If not, maybe we can put that in a follow-up email, but that has some great information on matching your social media platform with your audience. All right, last but not least, in terms of making sure in your posts you want to include relevant hashtags or handles. For those of you who aren't familiar with hashtags, hashtags are a word or phrase preceded by the pound symbol, and it serves as an indication for users and algorithms. So the algorithms are what's behind the social media platforms to figure out what to put into our feed, into what we see. So it helps feed the algorithms, as well as for people to find information within the social media platforms. Few thoughts about hashtags. So don't put a million words in one hashtag. That makes it really hard for people to read. And then you also don't need to do a hashtag for every word in a post, tweets in particular. Don't put spaces in your hashtags. You put like spacing props, you put it all together. And then there's what's called hashtag hijacking. It can be either good or bad. So hashtag hijacking is when somebody else has created a hashtag and you say, oh, I want to build on that. That's trending already. You need to make sure what it's trending about. So it can either be a really good thing to jump onto, or it could be a really bad thing. So make sure if you're using a hashtag, I have to say, not substance misuse prevention, but we're politically speaking, in our local community, there's a recall campaign for one of our our county commissioners. That person being recalled accidentally did a hashtag for the recall group. So it was Save Yamhill County. That's our county. So when she was like, Save Yamhill County, and everybody's like, don't tell her that was the hashtag that leads her to the recall against her. So that would be a hashtag hijacking fail. Erin, were you going to say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of things about hashtags. So someone says, I don't know, how do you know what's trending with a hashtag? And I don't get hashtags seriously. So one of the things a hashtag does is it does connect it to other posts that are using that same one. So, I went to, for example, you may be so this is a very simple example. You may be at a conference, and if you're posting on Twitter, especially, they may have a hashtag they want you to use, like hashtag NPN Conference 2021, or, APHA in Seattle. Or, there's different ways, and they'll tell you what they want to use. And what that does is it then connects all of those posts together through that algorithm, so that you can see everything that might be related to that. So it kind of attaches your post to something else. So like if you wanted to use something that was a hashtag that would direct you to, for instance, the national drug take back day. So you would want to know, so how do you know if that's trending? So oftentimes if you search for it in Twitter, or if you search for it, it'll come up, and you can see if it's coming up a lot, or you can search, as you start to type it in, you'll see things come up, right? So I use some hashtags for myself personally, and I spelled something wrong once, and it popped up, and I was like, oh, that's not what I meant. And I was able to delete it, obviously, before I posted it. But so you can often tell that something's trending based on typing that in and seeing how many things come up. Also, you can go to the trending page or go to the homepage on Twitter, but oftentimes what we're looking for is not trending in a big way. You can also use hashtags, I believe, in LinkedIn if you're looking for professionals.
And Christina put in some information in the chat box too. That's helpful for folks as well. So,
yep.
And I'm going to go ahead and keep moving on, because we are close. We're going to end here really quickly.
And you guys are such a great audience. I'm so sorry.
I know. I could sit here for hours with y'all. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Actually, and then we're going to switch over to just a fun video. I'm going to play about half of it. So this is on the PowerPoint slides if you want to go back and watch the rest. But some examples of poorly done hashtags.
Hey, Justin, what's up?
Not much, Jimmy. Hashtag chilling. What's up with you?
Just been busy working. Hashtag rise and grind. Hashtag is it Friday yet?
Hey, check it out. I brought you some cookies. Hashtag homemade. Hashtag oatmeal raisin. Hashtag show me the cookie.
Sweet. Hashtag don't mind if I don't. pretty good. Hashtag getting my cookie on. Hashtag I'm the real cookie monster. Hashtag no, 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 no.
Delicious, right? Hashtag I did it all for the cookie. Hashtag LOL.
Hashtag classic. By the way, did you catch last week's episode of Duck Dynasty? Hashtag quack quack.
Nah, lately I've mostly been watching Netflix. Hashtag Orange is the New Black.
Oh, nice. I've been watching a lot of Barney the Dinosaur. Hashtag purple is the new black. Hashtag I love you, you love me, we're a happy family. Hashtag I'm 38. Hashtag dinosaurs. Hashtag how do they go extinct? Hashtag meteor. Hashtag ice age. Hashtag speaking of ice age, I just watched Ice Age on demand the other day. Hashtag funny. Hashtag Ray Romano. Hashtag Deborah. Deborah.
All right, so we're gonna end there. I encourage you to watch the rest. There's about another minute of it. If you find that amusing, I would say go ahead and watch the rest. Erin, did you have any comments about that before we moved on?
No, I just love it. I would encourage you to watch the rest of it if you want a good laugh for the rest of the day. And it's an important message about using too many hashtags and not having them linked to what you really want to. Some of those hashtags that they mentioned are going to take you to very strange places.
Yes. I love some of the comments in the chat right now. Yeah, that's true, Karen. In terms of some are very well used, not all poorly used. So love it. All right, thank you. Okay, a few more thoughts. Tips on increasing engagement within social media. So this is going to be my soapbox for just a moment. People often create social media posts. They can create great posts in many ways, but you go and you look at and see how many people have seen it or commented on it, and it's often zero. So you go, even, when I initially put this presentation together, I went to see, okay, which social media posts about substance misuse prevention are doing well. There were very few that were doing well. And that's because folks have not put their time and effort into increasing engagement. If you aren't going to put in strategies to increase engagement, it's not worth doing it, because you're putting all this information together, spending all this time, and nobody's going to be looking at it. So you have to take this step. In terms of a core component or key component of social media strategy is making sure you have a strong engagement strategy. So here are a few ideas. One is, if you are able, you can offer discounts, specials, or freebies through your social media posts. Maybe you have a community coalition and you have some swag that you used to hand out at all these events that you would do that you haven't been able to do. Perhaps you do some drawings for those. You say, comment below with your favorite healthy activity to do or whatever, and we're going to do a drawing on tomorrow for a free t-shirt, whatever it might be. Anything to get people to start posting on that, because the more people are posting and the more you're reacting to their posts, the more likely it's going to pop up in their feed, which is going to, a snowball effect that people will then start seeing more, interacting more, etc. You want to post at least once a day. You want to post in a way that makes people feel a part of something. You want to create that community within your social media posts. Key, very, 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 very important. Get interactive, respond to comments. I see so many people put things up on social media. People reply and say, they might ask a question, and then there's silence, nothing. What is so important is, as people are replying, even if they don't ask a question, just say, great response, or yes, oh, great idea, or whatever it might be. You have to respond to their comments in order for them to feel heard. How many times have you responded to something and it went into thin air and you're like, well, why did I bother responding? Nobody even, whatever. So get that response going on. Make it relevant to your followers' lives. So again, depending on who you're targeting, like if it's parents that you're targeting, perhaps have some of those little quizzes that people can take, or resources that they can download, questions that they can be asking their teens about substance misuse, etc. Use words, not data, as much as possible. So instead of saying, well, 32.3% of XYZ County kids said that they used in the last year, whatever it might be. versus, did you know that most teens don't drink? That's going to be much easier. Think about, people are scrolling, scrolling, scrolling. What's going to catch their attention? And of course, make your accounts easily found and accessible. So if you do have a Facebook page, you do have a Twitter account, etc., make those easily found. And again, that could go back to those QR codes that we were talking about. Erin, did you have a thought about that?
No, I just wanted to share that we had a question that someone asked, and I went ahead and answered it in the Q&A section, but I will just share. Someone asked if they're should they make sure that they're using analytics regarding social media. If you have that capacity to find out how many people are visiting your website, how many people are viewing your posts, it's definitely something that you can do via Facebook or other media to find out how many people are actually viewing versus how many people are interacting with those posts. I think it may involve a different level of, I don't know, but the more you can use analytics in your social media, the better you can refine your messages to make sure they're reaching the right audience, that they're the right message, and that you're using the right images and those kinds of things. So definitely, if you have the capacity to use analytics, I would strongly encourage you to do so.
Yep, great. And Elizabeth made the point on that managing social media has become a full-time job in and of itself. Yes, it does. People think, oh, I'll just throw something up, it'll be really quick. If you want to do it well, it does take quite a bit of time, quite a bit of thought. Absolutely.
And planning, make a calendar.
Yes, yes.
Say what you're going to post on what days, especially if you want them to coincide with events, coincide with special days like Take Back Days or Red Ribbon Week or whatever it is that you want it to coincide with. Make sure you're planning that in advance. We schedule, we use a scheduling system like Buffer or Hootsuite. Abby, you are way more advanced.
I was just going to say, or even like in Facebook, when I have done it for different organizations, you can go in and you can schedule things out. So I would go in and I would put in a whole month's worth of posts. So I would just sit there for a couple hours, create posts, and then I would schedule them to come out each day, different times of the day, etc. And then I only had to do the follow-up and the interaction. I didn't have to think of what I'm going to post every day. So
that's great. And someone said they contracted it out for their own sanity, which sanity is important.
Yeah. And Christina suggested you could create a youth coalition to help manage social media campaigns. Or if you already have a youth coalition, perhaps that's something they can help you out with. But okay, we got to keep going. I want to make sure to get through the rest of this before we have to log off. So just a reminder, I just want to emphasize over and over, without engagement, your message is going to avoid. It's not worth doing if you aren't going to focus on engagement. All right, another digital strategy. So we talked about social media. Of course, another digital strategy many of us are very familiar with at this point are virtual meeting platforms. So like Zoom, Cisco WebEx, Microsoft Teams, FaceTime, GoToMeeting, et cetera, et cetera.
I would add real quickly LinkedIn if you are trying to reach professionals in a specific area. I have found that that's working well for me. People are chatting more and posting more in LinkedIn.
So I would would you put that in a social media platform though versus a meeting platform, or can you meet through?
Yep, people are posting more about events and about coalitions and yep. So I think it's a combination, but I'm seeing more and more colleagues and professionals posting in the feed in LinkedIn.
Yeah, and if you go back to the social media PowerPoint slide, I do have LinkedIn as one of the platforms on that, because that is an important thing to remember. It's a really good point, Erin, that we often think of who we're trying to reach in terms of our community, but it might be that we're trying to reach professionals more so, and LinkedIn would be a great platform for that. So very good. All right, so meeting platforms where we're doing meetings, webinars, those kinds of things. These are some examples of platforms, not exhaustive by any means, but some examples. Some ways that you can use these platforms are virtual town halls, coalition meetings, focus groups, youth groups, education programs like life skills, parenting, education. I know somebody mentioned they were doing parenting through virtual way at this point. Telemedicine, brief interventions in terms of working with indicated populations and prevention are being done virtually. There are other ways that people have done, like lunch and learn events, where they do a short half an hour kind of thing that people on their lunches, they can log in. My guess is that all of you are quite familiar with this list at this point, but maybe there's an idea in here that you hadn't thought of yet of how you might be able to use it. Some things to think about, though, in terms of engagement. So perhaps you have been using the platforms for those kinds of things, but some things you might want to keep in mind. You might want to make sure there's a call-in option. So for example, if you're doing a town hall meeting, or you're doing a focus group, or coalition meeting, etc., not everyone may be able to log on to be, to see one another like this, but they could at least participate through the phone. So that's a way, in terms of equity, that's not quite equitable, but it's an entryway to make sure there's more options for folks to be able to log in that way. When you are doing those kinds of sessions, again, it depends on the purpose of the session. Incorporating as much engagement opportunities as possible is really, really important. So the ability for people to raise their hands, to be called on, do polls, use the chat, have people be able to unmute themselves and comment when possible. Emoji reactions in some settings, again, like on Zoom meetings at this point, people can hit the emojis for reactions. Breakout rooms are fantastic. People love, love, love breakout rooms. So the more you can do that to have people work on things and come back together to a large group, definitely helps with engagement. Online tools, I'm going to keep going through here. We have just a couple minutes left. So some online survey tools you can use for conducting assessments, assessing community readiness, assessing the effectiveness of your strategy. A few to think about. SurveyMonkey is something I've used a lot. I've used Google Forms a lot. It used to be Survey Gizmo, and it's now, I believe it's pronounced Alchemer. Not positive about that. Qualtrics, Nicholas just put in there, is a great example too of another survey tool that can be used. Online brainstorming tools. This can also be really helpful in terms of getting people engaged. Google Docs, of course, can be used for that, multiple people working on things together. Jamboard, I'll show you an example of one in just a moment. Idea boards and Coggle as a way to do some group mind mapping. This is what I used in one of my trainings to try to get engagement, or to get engagement with folks, is I had them break up into 3 breakout rooms. And this was, they were working on social media and communication strategies. And I had them, the social marketing group, put in ideas for how they could use social media to help with their social marketing campaigns. The social norms marketing group put in their ideas in that column, and media advocacy folks, that group, put in their examples. So then they were, all 3 groups were in there, and their brainstorms were recorded on this spreadsheet at the same time. So then people could go back and look at what other groups have done. And they could also refer back to it after the end of the session. So that can be a useful tool. Here's an example of Jamboard. If you haven't used Jamboard yet, I highly recommend trying it out. It's a lot of fun. So these were people within the session. I had them brainstorming personnel and non-personnel resources. And these were their ideas that you can, it's like Post-it notes that you're putting up. Important, if you're using Google Docs, and Jamboard is a Google function, make sure you click on anyone with the link, and that they can be have editor privileges. If you don't do this and you just send out a link, your participants won't be able to do anything. So learn from my mistake. Make sure you go in and click those before starting your session. All right, so we talked about 4 types of digital strategies of engagement during COVID-19: social media, virtual media meeting platforms, online brainstorming tools, and online survey tools. And I know we're running out of time. We have 1 minute left. We had one question, and I think link names, do they need to be significant to desired viewers? Did that get answered in the chat? Is that right? Did I see that that happened?
I asked if she meant the URL, but she didn't respond.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and I'm not sure what link names. Cynthia, maybe type in another, whoops. Sorry, I tried to scroll down the chat and it went through. If you want to ask for clarification, maybe do that in the chat, and Christina could help in the chat, if that's all right, Christina.
Kris, do you want to talk a little bit about the follow-up?
Yes, so let's go. It's really important that you know, I'm going to go down to here because before people log off, we are going to do, if you want to spend more time with this, we are going to have an interactive session on November 9th, next week, from 10 to 12 Central Time. Only people who have been on here can join this. So this is you all. You can go in and register and join me for some more time to really delve into this. It's going to be the Zoom meeting platform, so we'll be able to do breakout rooms, a lot more options for interaction in that one. Erin, what did you want to add to that?
I just wanted to add that, please, there is a link here in the chat, and when we send things out, we send follow-up, the link will be there as well. It is coming up very soon. Please don't share the link with those who are not in this meeting today. You can share the information with them afterwards through some great engagement, but please don't share the link as we're looking to build off the learning that we did today. And we did some great learning today. You guys were an incredible audience. Not audience, group.
Participants.
Participants, you guys are great.
And then we also have, oh, the time's different on the link. Uh-oh. Susan, are you in Central Time Zone? Let's maybe have somebody double check that right now. But thank you for pointing that out, Susan.
Let me check.
All right. And we're going to go ahead and just skip those. Please look those over when you get the PowerPoint slides. There are a couple slides we had to skip. But we really, 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 really need you to submit this post-webinar feedback, as was mentioned at the beginning. This is how we provide the results of what we're doing to SAMHSA. Without your feedback, we can't do this. So it's super, super important and really easy, quick to do. So if you can do that, that would be great. That's going to be posted in the chat for you to link. Oh, and you'll be redirected after it. Thank you, Stephanie, for pointing that out. 11:30 to 2 Central Time is what's coming up.
Well,
Erin?
it says 12 noon.
Oh, sorry,
on the
12.
on the Zoom. Okay, I was gonna say, I think it's 12 to 2. We have a half hour built in for just the presenters. So
I'm so sorry.
And you know what I probably did is I put my time zone in there. I greatly apologize. I put Pacific time then. If it,
Time zones are hard.
12 to 2. Thank you, Susan, for pointing that out. So 12 to 2 Central Time. Thank you. I really apologize. I hope I didn't mess anybody else up with that. And PowerPoint will be emailed to you. So look for that in an email coming your way. And
actually, I think we'll post it all to the website when the
Okay.
recording, all the resources, links, and everything. We'll post to the website, the Great Lakes PTTC website. So check back there actually, I think we'll probably do it after the Learning Lab. So check back after November 9th. We should have all the resources available for you there.
Thanks, Christina. All right, and we will hang out here for another minute. I know I rushed through that last part. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to put it in the chat. And anybody wants to hang out for a minute or two, I'm happy to answer any other questions. And Julie, once you log out, you will automatically be directed to the survey. And thank you, everyone. And thank you, Erin, as well as Christina and Stephanie, who worked in the back end of things. You all are fantastic. Thank you for being here and helping.
Thank you, Kris and Erin. This was wonderful. Have a nice day, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Christina and Stephanie, if we could just keep this open for another minute in case people have questions, that would be great.
Yep, sure.
Thank you. All All right, I'm not seeing anybody. So let's go ahead and close it out so people can get to the survey.
Yep, survey
Thank
will
you,
go as soon as you're
everyone.
long out.
Bye,
Bye, y'all.
Bye.